my CEO wife, Willow. Never would have imagined it. She had been hospitalized for days after a car accident, and not only did I fail to visit her, I even mailed her the divorce papers, all because, in my previous life, Willow fell in love with a college student named Makoto and even brought him home. I tried everything to save our marriage, yet all I received in return was her indifference and impatience. In the end, to force me to sign the divorce, she went so far as to destroy my entire family. So after being reborn, I decisively fulfilled her wish, swiftly prepared the divorce agreement and moved out of this home. Yet when her lover smiled as he handed her the divorce certificate I had processed, she showed not even a trace of the joy she should have felt. Instead, she abandoned her lover and desperately searched for my whereabouts. Chapter 1. After being reborn, the very first thing I did was put the divorce agreement in front of my wife, Willow. She was holding her phone, typing a message. I didn't know what the other person said, but a faint smile rippled through her calm eyes, and even the corners of her lips lifted slightly. It was the look of someone in love, yet that trace of joy on her face disappeared completely the moment she saw me. We are getting a D. Before the word divorce even left my mouth, Willow had already taken the pen from my hand with a cold expression. The pen glided swiftly across the paper. After signing her name with a few strokes, she stood up indifferently and said, "Buy whatever you want directly." A sting shot through my chest, spreading a faint pain. Willow probably thought I had my eyes on another property. Perhaps because she cared so little about me, she didn't even bother looking at the contract and signed it outright. Willow and I had been married for 5 years. Although it was a business marriage, I had loved her for 10 full years. She had always worn simple business attire, yet the styles in her wardrobe had begun to diversify. She had never worn any jewelry, yet at some point, a silver band appeared on her ring finger. Even her phone case had changed into a pink couple-style design. My wife was in love, but not with me. A deep sense of crisis rose in my heart. After secretly investigating, I discovered that the usually cold and distant Willow had actually fallen for a male college student named Makoto. In my previous life, after discovering her affair, I went completely insane. I argued with her every day, screaming and breaking down. Willow simply proposed a divorce. I couldn't accept it at all. I tore the divorce agreement to pieces and slammed it in her face, swearing I would never let her and the homewrecker be together, that I would fight her to the end for the rest of our lives. I used every method possible to force Makoto away and force her to come back to me, turning myself into a twisted, deranged madman, until Willow spent 10 years stripping me of every ounce of support, pushing my family into bankruptcy, and forcing me to kneel before her, begging her to stop, begging for a divorce. The day I learned my parents had died, I jumped from the rooftop and died in front of her. All of the love and passion I ever had for her were completely exhausted in those 10 years of my previous life. Now that I had another chance, I only wanted to love myself and be a good son to my parents. Luckily, this time, everything could still be changed. I went straight to the law firm and handed over the divorce agreement. The sooner, the better. The lawyer glanced at it, suppressed the surprise in his eyes, and said respectfully, "Mr. Wong, the fastest will still be about a week." I nodded with a smile. All right. I had endured 10 years, waiting 7 days was nothing. I walked out of the law firm with light steps and drove directly to the mall. I would return to my family in South City in 7 days, and I wanted to bring them some gifts. When I entered the mall, the long line in front of a cake shop immediately caught my attention. I had always loved sweets, so I changed direction and stood at the end of the line. But just as I settled into place, I saw Willow, who never ate sweet things, walking out of the cake shop side by side with Makoto. Chapter 2. Young men are full of energy, and Makoto dragged Willow around to wander and eat everywhere. A CEO worth billions was holding a small cake good-naturedly, even cooperating by posing in silly photo-taking gestures. Even though I had already watched her indulge and spoil Makoto without any boundaries for 10 years, seeing it again still stirred a faint sourness in my heart. I loved eating cake too, but Willow had always said it was junk food and scoffed at it. I loved taking couple photos too, but Willow only thought it was boring and couldn't be bothered. Turns out, it wasn't that the things were bad, it was the person who was wrong. It wasn't that she couldn't love, it was just that the person she loved wasn't me. The moment Makoto pressed the shutter, Willow's peripheral vision finally caught sight of me not far away. Her expression changed instantly. She subconsciously pulled Makoto behind her and lifted her gaze toward me. "Are you following me?" My expression, originally one of watching the show, turned cold. Crossing my arms over my chest, I looked at her with a faint, mocking smile. "President Liu, what exactly is our relationship? Why would I follow you?" Willow Liu instantly had nothing to say. Makoto was a working student and met Willow while working as a server at a club. Willow, afraid he might feel pressured, hid the fact that she was a female CEO, and also hid the fact that she was married. But what she didn't know was that Makoto had already investigated her background thoroughly the moment he met her. The pure and innocent college boy she imagined was nothing more than a handsome guy willingly getting involved with a married woman. Standing beside Willow, Makoto was secretly sizing me up. I was the typical tall, rich, and handsome man people talked about, tall, with an even more outstanding appearance. Even though I was casually dressed, my calm and effortless aura, along with a striking face that drew people's eyes naturally, made Makoto look rather dull and shabby in comparison. Makoto had only ever been around teenagers his age. He had never seen someone as dazzling as me. His sense of crisis skyrocketed at once. As if declaring his claim, he leaned closer to Willow and asked in a low, intimate voice, "Willow, your friend?" Being held by him, Willow felt slightly uncomfortable and glanced at me. Just when she thought I would rush over, question her, and lose control again, I curled my lips in a cold sneer. "Not close." After saying that, I walked past Willow and turned to leave. Watching my free and easy departure, Willow felt a subtle trace of displeasure rise in her heart. Makoto, seeing her expression, felt an overwhelming wave of insecurity. He knew Willow had a husband, but he had never expected her husband to be this impressive. He clearly sensed something was wrong and carefully tested. "Willow, that friend of yours is quite handsome." Willow remembered how I was once praised as South City's top eligible bachelor and nodded, for once agreeing. "He does have a remarkable appearance." Makoto froze for a moment, jealousy flashing through his eyes. On normal days, Willow would have comforted him, telling him that in her heart, he was the most handsome. But now, Makoto looked at my disappearing figure, narrowed his eyes, full of resentment and unwillingness, and silently clenched his fists. I had only walked a few steps when my phone chimed. I opened it and found a rare message from Willow. "Makoto doesn't know about our relationship. He scares easily. If you have something to say, come to me, don't trouble him." Gripping my phone tightly, I transformed my grief and anger into a shopping spree, bought a pile of gifts, and then drove home. After video calling my parents, I leaned against the sofa and drifted into sleep. But the entire night, I was trapped in nightmares. Scenes from my previous life played repeatedly, with the final image being my determined figure jumping from a tall building. The sensation of falling to my death jolted me awake violently. When I opened my eyes, I found someone holding my hand. At some point, Willow had returned. She was sitting beside me, staring at me with a complicated expression. "What did you dream about? You kept begging me to let you go in your sleep." I pulled my hand back and replied calmly, "Nothing." My gaze swept across the familiar decorations of the living room, and I slowly freed myself from the suffocating despair of the dream. Right, I had been reborn. In this life, I would never cling to Willow until death again. My parents were still alive. I still had the chance to start over. Willow's eyes landed on the calendar I had casually left on the coffee table. I had circled a date in red, 6 days later, the 18th. For some reason, she felt bothered by it. She stared at it for a moment and asked, "What's special about this day?" I shot her a cool glance. "A good day." After speaking, I got up from the sofa and went to pour myself some water. Willow took out her phone and messaged her assistant, "Is the 18th a special day?" The assistant quickly replied, "President Liu, the 18th is your 5th wedding anniversary with your husband. I've already chosen a gift for him and reserved a table at the restaurant for both of you." Willow glanced at me again, the corners of her lips lifting. So cold, so he was upset because she forgot their anniversary. Unaware of her thoughts, I drank my water while messaging a few friends to meet up. I was returning to South City in 6 days, and I probably wouldn't come back to a city often. I had to properly say goodbye before leaving. My friends were all shocked to hear I was getting divorced. After all, everyone knew how hopelessly romantic I had been, loving Willow for 10 full years. None of them were unaware of it. After dinner, when we split up and I was about to drive back, a figure suddenly rushed toward me. He dropped to his knees right in front of me, looking up at me pitifully. "Mr. Wong, please let Willow and me be together." Chapter 3. He clung to my pant leg, crying and begging. "Mr. Wong, you're so outstanding. From such a good family, there's no type of woman you can't have. Why must you hold on to Willow and refuse to let go? I know I can't compare to you. I have nothing. I don't have a good family background. I don't have the support you have. But I truly love her. She's all I have. Please give her to me. Don't keep holding on to a woman who doesn't love you. Please. I'm begging you, let us be together." His sudden action immediately drew the attention of many people nearby. A crowd gathered, pointing and whispering, instantly assuming I was some arrogant jerk bullying someone and stealing another man's girlfriend. Looking down at him from above, I asked, "Does Willow know you're such a good actor?" Seeing that so many people were siding with him and criticizing me, Makoto went even further. Not only did he kneel, he even lifted his own hand and slapped himself across the face. "Mr. Wong, don't blame Willow. It's all my fault. Hit me, scold me, anything is fine as long as it calms you down." I let out a disbelieving laugh. From outside the crowd, a familiar figure rushed over. "Makoto, She pushed through the crowd, rushed in, and pulled Makoto up into her arms. Makoto leaned against her, tilting his head up to look at her. His eyes shimmered with tears, full of helplessness and dependence. Willow's heart ached instantly. Her gaze turned icy cold as she looked at me, her voice laced with both anger and ridicule. "Young Master Wong, your temper is really something. Throwing your weight around, forcing someone to kneel, forcing someone to slap himself. What's next on your list?" I forced down my anger and pointed toward a security camera in the corner. "I'm not that bored. If you have time, check your own mall surveillance footage. Then you'll know exactly what kind of person you're holding in your arms." After speaking, I turned to leave. Willow followed my gaze to the camera, and her expression shifted. Meanwhile, Makoto's face turned pale. The next moment, he lightly tugged her sleeve and hurriedly waved his hand. "Willow, Mr. Wong didn't bully me. It's just a misunderstanding between us. I'm fine, really fine." Even though his words said otherwise, he looked exactly like someone who'd been mistreated yet was trying to endure it. Willow immediately became even more convinced that I had bullied him. She looked at my back and said coldly, "You bully someone and think you can just walk away?" My steps halted. I turned my head slightly and stared at her expressionlessly. "What do you want?" Willow pulled Makoto closer and looked at me, speaking each word clearly. "This isn't South City. No one here is going to indulge you like the Wong family does, letting you act arrogant and push people around." My expression darkened instantly. My fists clenched tight as I gritted out, "Shut up, Willow. You have no right to mention my family." Willow let out a soft, disdainful snort, then looked at Makoto. "Makoto, don't be afraid. I told you, no matter what happens, I'll protect you. No one can touch even a finger of yours. If someone bullies you, what should you do?" Makoto glanced at me and muttered, "Hit back. And if someone hits you first, hit them back harder." Satisfied, Willow said, "Exactly. Do it." I stared at her in disbelief, my whole body trembling with anger. "Willow, you've gone insane. I'm your husband." But the next moment, Makoto stepped forward and swung his hand hard. A loud, crisp slap exploded across my face. Pack. The sound was sharp and ringing. The rest of my words were shattered. My head was knocked to the side, my ears buzzed, and my cheek burned with pain. After hitting me, Makoto immediately slipped back behind Willow, pretending to be harmless and timid while looking at me fearfully. But the triumph in his eyes, no matter how he hid, was unmistakable. Those eyes, filled with malice and self-satisfaction, were ones I had seen countless times in my previous life. And Willow, just like before, only needed to see him shed a few tears, show a bit of grievance, and she would always blindly stand on his side. A violent surge of hatred and fury erupted inside me. I stared at Willow and Makoto with sheer, overwhelming resentment. For a moment, I even wanted to lunge at them and tear them apart completely. Chapter 4. Meeting my gaze, Willow felt a faint chill in her heart, yet she still continued. "George, you were the one who did wrong first. You have no right to be angry. You hit him, so of course he can hit you back. You forced him to kneel in public, then you should also try kneeling here and letting people point at you and mock you." After speaking, she waved to the bodyguards. One of the bodyguards looked at me awkwardly. "Sir, forgive us." The next second, 2 bodyguards pressed down on my shoulders. I kept my back straight, not moving at all. A bodyguard kicked the back of my knee. My legs gave out instantly, and I dropped heavily onto the tiles. The pain in my knees felt like they were splitting apart, but even that wasn't as painful as the humiliation of being judged and ridiculed by the surrounding crowd. Willow looked down at me from above. "Today is just a lesson. Reflect on yourself, and from now on, you're not allowed to bully Makoto." She then grabbed Makoto's hand and turned to leave. I called after her. "Willow." Her steps halted, and she asked impatiently, "What now?" Enduring the pain, I pushed myself up from the ground and limped toward her and Makoto. Makoto held onto her arm, unable to hide the smugness in his eyes. With half my face swollen and red, I suddenly let out a small laugh, then said slowly, "I just want to tell you, if I were the one actually hitting him." Before I finished the sentence, I suddenly swung my hand upward, using my full strength, and slapped Makoto twice across the face, hard. Pack, pack. Oh. He was sent flying, crashing to the ground and letting out a sharp scream. I coldly laughed. "That is my strength." Willow's face changed drastically. She rushed over and pulled him into her arms. "Makoto." Makoto howled in pain. His ear felt wet, and when he touched it, he shrieked. "Ah, it's blood. I'm going to go deaf, you." Willow could no longer spare a single glance at me. She hurriedly dragged him into the car and shouted at the driver, "To the hospital, now." Watching them leave, I calmly took out my phone and called the mall manager, my voice icy. "Pull up the surveillance footage and send it to me. This mall belonged to the Lu Corporation." Of course the manager recognized me. He responded quickly, and within minutes, the video was sent over. I limped my way back home. The moment I stepped inside, I saw the wedding photo hanging on the wall. In the photo, Willow's face was expressionless and distant. Meanwhile, the me standing beside her was smiling like a fool, my expression filled with overflowing, unrestrained affection. What a pathetic, ridiculous marriage. I stared at it silently for a long time. Then I picked up the water glass on the table and hurled it at the enormous wedding portrait. Bang! The frame crashed to the ground, shattering into pieces, much like my love for her. After that, I grabbed a baseball bat and walked to a display cabinet in the master bedroom. After our marriage, Willow had insisted we sleep in separate rooms. I lived alone in the master bedroom, and I even hired someone to build a display cabinet. A cabinet filled entirely with the gifts Willow had given me over the years, even though I knew very well that every single one of those gifts had been bought by her assistant. Gripping the baseball bat tightly, I swung it down with full force, smashing it onto the cabinet. Glass shattered, scattering across the floor. Everything inside fell and rolled, turning into a chaotic mess. Everything that displeased me, I smashed into pieces. Everything I used to cherish, I destroyed completely. The last remnants of love in my heart were torn apart, bit by bit, by my own hands, until nothing remained. The servants were terrified by my actions. Seeing the swelling on my face, they didn't dare to say a word. They only stood aside silently as I broke down. These items, once, they were my most treasured possessions. Only when I finally grew tired did I speak to the servants. If any of you like these things, take them. The rest, throw all this trash out. Chapter 5. The servants didn't dare touch the jewelry and luxury goods worth over $1 million. They exchanged glances, then quietly packed everything away for storage and silently cleaned up the mess in the house. Willow returned when it was already nighttime. The woman entered wrapped in cold air. Her long dress was wrinkled from running around all day, and her indifferent, detached face looked even more icy and unfeeling. She immediately noticed something was wrong in the house, empty, echoing, as though many things were missing. The servants wanted to speak, but when they saw Makoto standing beside her, one by one they pressed their lips together and stayed silent. Willow's gaze landed on me sitting on the sofa drinking tea. Her voice was cold and hard. Makoto's hearing was damaged after you hit him, and you still have the mood to sit here drinking tea. The swelling on my face had gone down a little from the ice pack, but the redness was still obvious. I looked at Willow with a cold expression and curled my lips. What? Do you expect me to set off fireworks and celebrate? Willow's anger only intensified, utterly stubborn. She directly ordered the bodyguards, take him to the confinement room, let him calm down properly. My eyes turned slightly red as I glared at her stubbornly. Willow, I'm your husband, not your subordinate. You have no right to treat me like this. Willow's attitude grew even more forceful, her tone chilling. I'm your wife. I have the right to correct you when you make mistakes. At her command, 2 bodyguards stood at my sides. Sir, please don't make this difficult for us. My nose stung, my eyes burned red, but I refused to let the tears fall. Holding myself upright, I walked toward the confinement room, but because of the injuries on my knees from being forced to kneel earlier, I limped as I walked. Willow's gaze flickered to my bruised knees. Her expression shifted slightly, a hint of reluctance rising in her heart, but in the next moment, Makoto tugged gently on her sleeve. He whispered softly, Willow, maybe I should go back to the dorm. Mr. Wang hates me so much. Staying here is troubling you. The flicker of emotion in Willow's heart vanished instantly. She gently patted Makoto's head and spoke tenderly. Didn't you say your roommates isolate and bully you? How can I be at ease if you go back? Stay here. After you recover, I'll rent you an apartment near your school. Makoto nodded obediently, but as his eyes swept across the villa's luxurious decorations, a greedy glint flashed within them. Now that he had finally moved in, how could he possibly be willing to leave and live in a shabby rental near the school? I heard their entire conversation clearly and let out a cold, mocking smile. The bodyguards watched me walk into the confinement room, then locked the door from the outside. The light inside was broken and hadn't been replaced yet. The room was filled with unused furniture placed randomly, the space cluttered and dim. I found a corner, sat down, and curled up, hugging my arms around myself. The pain in my knees and the burning on my cheek kept reminding me of everything that had happened. In the darkness, I could no longer hold back the tears that slid down my face. Expressionless, I raised a hand to wipe them away. George, don't cry. Let her play around with whatever kind of pretty boy she wants. In 5 days, you'll finally be free. You'll be far away from her. You just loved the wrong person. It's not your fault. But the more I comforted myself, the more fiercely the tears flowed. When I finally grew tired from crying, I leaned against the wall, resting my head on my knees, and fell asleep. Half asleep, I sensed someone quietly opening the window of the confinement room. A large bag was thrown inside. Sleep vanished from my body instantly. I jumped to my feet and rushed to bang on the door. Open the door. Open it now. The confinement room was small, so barely moments after I spoke, I felt something begin to move toward me in the darkness. Chapter 6. I completely panicked, my face turning deathly pale. Willow, open the door. Open it. Something came in. Willow. My terrified screams echoed through the villa. Willow was startled awake and rushed out. Hearing my cries for help from downstairs, she immediately ordered the bodyguards, "Give me the key." But just as she grabbed the key and ran toward the confinement room, her arm was pulled back by Makoto. "Willow, this is your house. How could something possibly get in? Isn't Mr. Wang just pretending so he won't have to stay locked up?" As he spoke, he lowered his head, eyes reddened. "He hit me so badly that my hearing might be permanently damaged, and you can't even bear to keep him in a room for just a few hours." Willow froze at the sight of the tears on his face, separated only by a single door. I heard their conversation clearly, but right then, I had no time to be angry, because something cold and smooth wrapped around my leg and bit down hard. I was terrified and in pain. I pounded on the door desperately, screaming, "Ah, Willow, I'm not lying, it's a snake. A snake got in. Open the door. Save me. Open the door, please. Ah." One snake after another coiled around my legs, sinking their teeth into me. I trembled violently, terrified, kicking and shaking them off as best as I could, completely breaking down. But no matter how hard I screamed, the confinement room door never opened. A deep, crushing despair spread through my heart. I never thought that even before everything went wrong, Willow could already treat me with such cruelty. I stopped calling for help, enduring the pain and the hopelessness. My hand found an abandoned table leg in the corner. I gripped it hard and swung it at the snakes. I killed 3 or 4 of them in succession. Only then did the remaining snakes retreat, slithering far away, not daring to approach again. My whole body tensed. I curled up in the corner, clutching the blood-stained table leg tightly in my arms. When the confinement room grew completely silent, one of the servants finally couldn't hold back and said to Willow, "Madam, you should open the door and check. Sir never lies. If something really happened to him." Willow's expression changed slightly. Only then did she hurriedly insert the key and unlock the door. The moment the door opened, several snakes shot out of the room. Screams erupted outside the villa. Makoto also turned pale, jumping up and shrieking as he hid behind Willow. Realizing what had happened, Willow's face drained of color as she looked into the confinement room. Light from outside streamed in. In the shifting shadows, I stepped out slowly, clutching the blood-stained table leg in my arms. My hair was disheveled. My legs were covered in several snakebite wounds. My face was ghostly pale, and the look I gave her was filled with blood-soaked hatred. Willow's heart clenched as if someone had gripped it tightly. She pushed Makoto aside and stepped toward me, her voice trembling. "George, I didn't know there were, George." Before she could finish, my vision went black. I swayed and collapsed, falling into Willow's arms. I smelled the cheap cologne Makoto had rubbed onto her earlier when he hugged her. My lips moved, wanting to say dirty. But in the end, I lost consciousness completely, unwilling even as everything went dark. Chapter 7. When I woke up again, I was already in a hospital room. I had been so terrified that I remained unconscious for 2 full days. But the places on my legs where the snakes had bitten still throbbed with pain. Not only my legs hurt, my hands, scraped raw from pounding on the door and gripping the table leg too tightly, were swollen and red. The moment Willow saw me wake up, she grabbed my hand tightly and said softly, "George, you're finally awake. Don't worry, the doctor checked you. Even though you were bitten, those snakes weren't venomous. It's not life-threatening. Just rest for a few days." It seemed Willow had been guarding me all along. Her eyes were bloodshot. Standing beside her, Makoto's eyes were also red, as if he had cried a long time. Even his eyelids were puffy. I glanced deeply at Willow, but what surfaced in my mind was scene after scene of me pounding on the door, begging her for help, while she did nothing. Slowly, I pushed myself up and sat. Then, gathering all the strength I had, I swung my hand hard across Willow's face. Makoto screamed instantly, rushing to shield her. "Mr. Wang, Willow has been blaming herself and worrying about you nonstop. Are you even a man? How can you just hit someone without a word?" Willow's beautiful face was snapped to the side by the slap. She looked up at me, her voice low and hoarse. "Feel better?" I slapped her, but I was the one panting weakly at the edge of the bed. Hearing her words, I only let out a cold laugh. A single slap could settle everything. "Dream on," I said coldly. "Where's my phone?" Willow handed it to me from her pocket, confused. "Your brother called, wanted to know if you bought your ticket. Why are you suddenly going back to South City? Once you're better, I'll go with you to visit your family." I had already told my family about the divorce. The Wangs had seen Willow's indifference for years, and they supported me wholeheartedly. I looked at Willow. She had no idea. My lips curved faintly. I didn't explain. I simply dialed 110. When the call connected, I said expressionlessly, "Hello, I want to report a crime. Someone maliciously released snakes into my home." Willow and Makoto both froze. Willow spoke first. "George, The confinement room is near the garden. Maybe they crawled in from outside. Since you're fine, let's not pursue this. If it blows up, it'll affect both our companies. I stared at her coldly, mocking. He nearly cost me my life, and you want to talk to me about company impact? Willow's expression flickered as she glanced at Makoto. Clearly she suspected him. But even with coldness in her eyes, she still chose to defend him. Makoto put on the look of someone whose world just collapsed. Willow, even you suspect me. It was my first time at your house. Where would I even find someone to do it? How would I arrange snakes beforehand? Before Willow could reply, he suddenly dropped to his knees beside my hospital bed with a thud, begging through tears, Mr. Wong, I beg you, please spare me. Okay. I know I was wrong. I have nothing. I can't compare to your powerful background. I shouldn't have fallen for Willow. I shouldn't have deluded myself into competing with you. I can't compare with your schemes or tactics. First you nearly made me deaf, and now you want to frame me and send me to the police. I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'll stay far away from Willow from now on. I won't ever appear in front of you again. My parents only have one child. They're waiting for me to take care of them. I beg you, spare me. He kowtowed repeatedly. And before long his forehead turned red. Just a few sentences. And he completely twisted the situation, making it sound like I had staged everything just to frame him. If I wasn't absolutely sure of myself, even I might have been fooled by his performance. Willow's faint suspicion evaporated instantly. She rushed to lift Makoto up, heart aching. Makoto, stop crying. I believe you. Why are you so silly? But Makoto pulled away from her, still crying. Willow, I was wrong to love you. Please ask Mr. Wong to spare me. And don't come looking for me again. I'll leave. I won't bother you two anymore. He then ran out of the ward crying. Makoto. Without hesitation, Willow abandoned me and chased after him. Watching her back, I let out a faint, mocking smile. I got up, endured the pain, and checked out of the hospital. Returning home, a servant approached and handed me a document. Sir, this just arrived. It says it's important. I took it, opened it. It was the divorce certificate. A weight lifted from my chest. Perfect timing. I went upstairs, packed the last of my belongings into a suitcase, then walked out of the villa. Just as I was about to drive off, my phone rang. A rushed voice from the hospital said, "Hello, your wife Willow has been in an accident. She's in surgery right now. Please come immediately." After asking for details, I learned what happened. Makoto threw a tantrum and ran out of the hospital. Willow chased him to calm him down. They argued on the roadside. Makoto ran into the street and was almost hit by a car. Willow jumped in to protect him and was hit instead. By the time I rushed to the hospital, Willow had already been taken into the operating room. Makoto sat outside crying non-stop, repeating, "I didn't know it would end like this. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it." He was too terrified to sign anything. A doctor approached with a surgical consent form. "Are you the patient's family? Please sign this." I hesitated for a few seconds. Then I took the form, signed it, and pulled the divorce certificate from my bag. Makoto stared at it in surprise, his eyes lighting up instantly. I handed it to him. "We're already divorced. This is the last time I'm signing for her as family. Give her the divorce certificate when she wakes up." Makoto took it eagerly, opening it immediately, his hands trembling with excitement. "Mr. Wong, don't worry. From now on, Willow has me. I'll take good care of her." I gave a soft, dismissive laugh and turned away. "Willow, in this lifetime, I finally let you go. From now on, no matter how vast the world is, you and I will have nothing to do with each other ever again." Chapter 8. At the door of the operating room, Makoto opened Willow's divorce certificate and looked at it over and over again. The joy and greed in his eyes could not be hidden no matter what. He never expected George would give up the marriage so easily, without George standing in his way. The position of Willow's husband would naturally fall into his pocket. Just as he was overjoyed, urgent footsteps approached. A noble woman, surrounded by attendants, came straight to the operating room doors. Standing beside her was the hospital director, speaking respectfully. "Mrs. Liu, young President Liu is undergoing surgery inside. Please rest assured, the surgeon in charge is the top specialist in our hospital. We will ensure her safety." Mrs. Liu nodded slightly. "I'll trouble you." Hearing the director's words and seeing the woman's imposing manner, Makoto instantly understood who she was. Willow Liu's parents were also a commercial alliance. Even after marriage, Mrs. Liu continued managing her own family's business and held considerable influence in the Liu household. Makoto quickly stuffed the divorce certificate into his bag, then jogged forward eagerly to greet her. "Auntie Liu, hello, I am." Smack. Before he finished speaking, Mrs. Liu raised her hand and slapped him across the face, cold, sharp, merciless. The entire hallway fell silent. Everyone nearby lowered their heads, not daring to speak. Makoto held his cheek, staring at Mrs. Liu in disbelief. Mrs. Liu looked at him icily, So you are the worthless thing who caused my daughter's car accident. Makoto knew he was at fault. He whispered, I'm sorry. Willow was hit because she tried to protect me. Mrs. Liu didn't even spare him another glance. She simply ordered the bodyguards, throw him out. This kind of trash dares go near my daughter. Where's George? Did anyone call him over? A bodyguard stepped forward, ready to drag Makoto out of the hospital. Makoto immediately said, Mrs. Liu, even if you don't like me, it doesn't change the fact that Willow loves me. Besides, George and Willow are already divorced. Mrs. Liu's expression changed drastically. What did you say? Makoto hurriedly broke free and took the divorce certificate from his bag, presenting it to her. Look, I'm not lying. George came earlier. He didn't care whether Willow lived or died. He threw the divorce certificate at me and left. Mrs. Liu tightened her grip on the document and handed it to her assistant. Verify its authenticity. Her tone was calm, but each word slapped Makoto harder than any hand. His eyes flashed with humiliation, but he still bit his lip and said, Mrs. Liu, it's real. George handed it to me himself. I have no reason to lie. Willow got hurt because of me. When she wakes up, the first person she'll want to see is definitely me. Please don't throw me out. Let me take care of her. The assistant quickly returned with the results. Madam, it's authentic. Mrs. Liu's face paled. When she looked at Makoto again, the coldness in her gaze deepened. Makoto lowered his eyes, putting on the appearance of a fragile, innocent victim, but the hidden pride in his eyes was something Mrs. Liu saw through instantly. Just then, the operating room doors opened. The surgeon who had operated on Willow Liu stepped out and said respectfully, Don't worry, the patient is now out of critical condition. Mrs. Liu finally allowed herself a faint sigh of relief. Makoto also relaxed, the corners of his mouth lifting. That's great. Willow's safe. That's great. If Willow lived, he'd have someone powerful to back him. Mrs. Liu suddenly threw the divorce certificate into his face, her voice like frost. Don't think that just because George and Willow divorced, you can climb up. Let me make this perfectly clear. In this lifetime, don't even dream of attaching yourself to the Liu family. After speaking, she didn't look at Willow being pushed out of the operating room. She simply turned and walked toward the exit. Only when she reached the hospital entrance did she finally stop and speak tiredly to her assistant. Tell the second young master to return from abroad. The assistant stared, startled. Madam, you mean? Mrs. Liu rubbed her aching forehead and let out a bitter smile. How can I entrust the Liu family to someone who loses her mind over trash like that? After Willow was admitted for emergency treatment, she had immediately investigated everything. Before George left, he had collected surveillance footage, him being forced to kneel, locked in the confinement room, and all of it had been sent straight to Mrs. Liu, the daughter raised since childhood as the Liu family's heir had harmed her own husband. For the sake of a cheap little boy toy, Mrs. Liu was utterly, deeply disappointed. The assistant no longer dared to speak. He quickly lowered his head and arranged for the second young master's return. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Makoto mistook Mrs. Liu's departure as a sign she had chosen to tolerate him. He hurried after Willow, fussing over everything in the ward as he played the devoted caretaker. Willow slept until the next day before waking. Drowsily, she saw someone sleeping with his head resting against her hospital bed. Every time she was sick, George did guard her like this, completely. Her gaze softened. She whispered, George. Chapter 9. Makoto looked up and met Willow's eyes, and his own instantly reddened. Sorry, I'm not the George you want to see. Willow's expression shifted slightly, but she quickly suppressed it and comforted him. Makoto, thank you for taking care of me. Makoto also knew this wasn't the time to throw a tantrum at her. Anyway, George was already gone, and from now on, Willow would be his. He stood up and threw himself into her arms. Willow, you finally woke up. You scared me to death. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have been petty with you. I swear I'll never act so willfully again. Luckily you're safe. Otherwise I'd never forgive myself. Willow held him, comforting him. As long as you're fine. Although she was saying soothing words, her heart felt strangely empty. Her gaze searched around the hospital room, yet she never found any trace of George. After her mind cleared a little, she picked up her phone and began scrolling through it. Her chat with George had remained completely silent. George not only hadn't shown up, he hadn't even sent her a single message of concern. Her expression cooled. She hadn't even held it against him for staging that emotional manipulation act to frame Makoto. Yet he was still putting on airs. Feeling irritated, she tossed her phone aside. Makoto had no experience taking care of people. After she woke up, he immediately called the doctor to come check her. Once he confirmed she was fine, he finally relaxed completely. He either hovered next to her, talking about topics she had absolutely no interest in, or sat at her bedside, playing on his phone and watching meaningless videos. Willow used the excuse of being tired and closed her eyes to pretend she was asleep. Bored in the ward, Makoto went downstairs to walk around and call his friends. Only when his figure disappeared did Willow pull out her phone again and resume scrolling. 2 days had passed, and George still hadn't shown up. In the past, this would have been absolutely impossible, without George bustling around nearby. She felt unaccustomed in every way. After a moment's hesitation, she sent him a message, "Why haven't you come?" Once the message was sent, she stared fixedly at the screen. He had always replied in seconds, but this time, nothing. Willow opened the app several times and even restarted her phone once, but all the incoming messages of concern from others clearly proved her phone wasn't broken. Frowning hard, she sent another message, still angry. However, the moment the message was sent, a red exclamation mark popped up beneath it. Willow stared at the bright red symbol in disbelief. "George, did you actually block me?" She threw off the blanket and strode straight toward the ward George had previously stayed in. But when she angrily pushed open the door, the person sitting on the hospital bed wasn't George, it was an unfamiliar woman. Startled by Willow's sudden entrance, the woman frowned. "Who are you looking for?" Willow turned away and grabbed a passing nurse. "Where's the person who used to stay in this room? Where is George?" The young nurse was frightened. "That patient was discharged 2 days ago." "That's impossible." Willow frowned. George had been discharged the very day she was admitted. But he had been so badly injured then. Her heart sank lower and lower as she realized something had slipped beyond her control. No, maybe he just went home. Panic surged in her chest. She couldn't sit still any longer. She turned and ran downstairs, driving home as fast as she could. She sped all the way back, rushing into the house while calling George's name repeatedly. "George! George, where are you?" The servants were stunned to see her burst into the house still wearing a hospital gown. She searched the house quickly and found it eerily empty. Everything related to George, every single thing, was gone. She walked to the display cabinet in the master bedroom, only to find it completely dismantled. Not a trace left behind. Her face turned deathly pale. She knew this cabinet had been custom-made by George. Inside it had been all the gifts she had given him. He had cherished them the most. But now, the cabinet was gone, and all the gifts inside were gone too. She raised her hand and pointed at the empty space where it had been. "This cabinet," the servants answered cautiously. "Sir smashed it to pieces himself a few days ago. He gave us all the items inside, but they were too valuable, so we didn't dare accept them. We only stored them temporarily." The servants brought out the gifts and placed them before Willow. Willow stared at the pile of gifts, her mind going blank. The next moment, she heard a servant say, "Ma'am, Sir left with his suitcase a few days ago." Chapter 10. Left. Whenever George went anywhere, he always informed her in advance. He had never once disappeared without saying a word. He had come to a city alone. Where could he possibly go now? Also alone. A vague suspicion rose in Willow's heart. She took out her phone and dialed George's sister, Alicia. The Liu family and the Wang family had many business collaborations, and she had always gotten along well with Alicia. But the moment the call rang once, it was hung up. She tried again. This time, she had been blocked entirely. Listening to the busy tone, Willow froze in place. Just then, the front door was pushed open. Willow's expression changed instantly, hope flashing across her face. "George." But the person who walked in was Makoto. The moment she saw him, Willow didn't even bother to hide the disappointment on her face. She frowned slightly and said flatly, "Why did you come here?" Makoto suppressed the annoyance and jealousy in his eyes and hurried over, affectionately grabbing her arm. "Willow, why did you come back alone without telling me? I went to the ward and couldn't find you. I was worried sick." But Willow had no energy to comfort him. She merely said calmly, "I'm fine. I'm not going back to the hospital. You go back first." George was suddenly discharged and disappeared. "He's still injured. I need to find him." Makoto lifted his chin to look at her. "He didn't leave suddenly. After hearing about your car accident, he came to the hospital, gave me this, and then left." As he spoke, he took a divorce certificate out of his bag and handed it to Willow. "Willow, he doesn't care about you at all. He's not a qualified husband in the slightest. Now that you're divorced, even better. From now on, I'll be the one by your side taking care of you." Willow stared at the red booklet pinched between his fingers in disbelief. The words, "divorce certificate," stabbed into her eyes like a sharp blade. She snatched it and flipped it open. Her name was truly inside. "No, impossible. I never signed any divorce papers. How could he possibly divorce me?" As soon as she spoke, she remembered that plain, ordinary morning when George suddenly had her sign some document. Sometimes when George bought things, he would have her sign to confirm receipt. She had assumed that was the case this time as well. She had been busy chatting with Makoto then and didn't bother to check what she was signing. Makoto wrapped both arms around her waist and pulled her tightly into his embrace. "Willow, no one can stop us from being together anymore." Willow had once loved being around Makoto. She had been raised since childhood under elite training. The people around her were always mature, pragmatic, and realistic. When she met Makoto, She thought he was simple, kind, uncalculating, a poor boy from a struggling family who remained proud and hard-working despite his hardships. But now, being held by Makoto, she smelled the cloying sweetness of the perfume on him and saw the high-end designer suit he was wearing, purchased using her card. The pure and stubborn boy in her memory had long faded into something unrecognizable. A dark shadow passed through Willow's eyes. She pushed Makoto away, her voice distant. "You should go back. I still have things to handle." Makoto froze. "Willow, you..." But she had already waved her hand, instructing the bodyguards to escort Makoto out. Her tone was cold and forceful, leaving him no room to refuse. Makoto's expression darkened, but thinking there would be plenty of opportunities in the future, he obediently left, feeling heavy and irritable. Willow rubbed her temples and glanced around the house. Without George, the place felt frighteningly strange and empty. She fled hurriedly, almost in a panic. Willow drove straight to a bar and drowned herself in alcohol, as if escaping from something. She had thought her relationship with George was nothing more than a business marriage. If he divorced her out of anger, then so be it. But the suffocating ache in her chest felt horribly foreign and uncomfortable. The thought that they no longer had any connection filled her heart with rejection and an unwillingness to accept it. The more she drank, the clearer George's figure appeared in her mind, and the more suffocated she felt inside. Willow stumbled back home. The moment she opened the door, she almost saw George walking up to her with a gentle smile. Seeing she was drunk, he would frown helplessly, softly complain, and then carry her tenderly back to the bedroom. "Your stomach is weak. Why did you drink so much?" "George, you're back." Willow smiled and reached out, wanting to throw herself into his arms, but she staggered, her hands grasping nothing but air. Only then did she realize, everything she had just seen had been an illusion. Willow lifted her head, staring at the empty, unfamiliar house that felt as if it would swallow her whole. The bitterness in her chest nearly consumed her. Only one thought became increasingly clear. She had to find him. She had to find her husband. Chapter 11. I got off the plane and immediately saw my parents and sister waiting for me in the arrivals hall. The moment they saw me, their eyes turned red, and they called my name in unison. "George." My nose stung. But what flashed in my mind was the scene from my previous life, my parents being forced to their deaths by Willow. Fortunately, in this life, I didn't lose my mind, and my family was still here. My tears overflowed instantly. I ran forward and threw myself into my parents' arms. Alicia frowned at my pale complexion. "Why do you look so pale? Do you feel unwell?" Not wanting them to worry, I shook my head quickly. "Just tired from the long flight. I'll be fine after some sleep at home." Alicia didn't press further, only said, "As long as you're back." Our family returned home happily, and no one mentioned Willow's name. Mom kept fussing that I'd lost weight and personally cooked a whole table of my favorite dishes. I stayed home recovering for several days, until my good friend David showed up and dragged me to the beach to relax. I lounged lazily on a beach chair, sipping juice and enjoying the sea breeze. David was the person who knew best how deeply I had loved Willow for 10 whole years. Seeing me so relaxed only made him even more anxious. He leaned over and cautiously asked, "You and Willow, you really divorced?" I gave him a sidelong glance. "Didn't you spend 10 minutes flipping through my divorce certificate on the very first day I got back?" David couldn't help it. He grinned foolishly for a second, then suddenly raised his voice. "Good that you divorced. You can't keep hanging yourself on Willow's crooked tree. Don't worry, I've got plenty of premium resources. When I date girls, I'll date 2 at a time, 1 for me, 1 for you." I had been drinking juice and almost choked on it when I heard that. "Thanks a lot. You really are my good brother." David laughed loudly. "Of course, what are we, if not brothers?" I couldn't help but smile. Just as I lifted my eyes, my gaze suddenly froze on the ocean. A mother had been playing in the water with her child, but a wave hit her unexpectedly and knocked her down. By the time she got up again, her child had already been swept farther out by the waves. She immediately panicked and burst into screaming cries. But there were too many people on the beach, the laughter and noise drowning her out. Many didn't even notice something was wrong. I put down my cup and rushed toward her. David was startled. "What's wrong?" I didn't have time to answer. Once I reached the water, I dove into the sea and swam desperately toward the child. The wind had picked up, and the waves grew stronger. The child bobbed up and down with the tide. I finally reached the little girl and grabbed her tightly, using one arm to lift her above the water so she could breathe while I swam toward shore. But swimming in the ocean was already difficult, not to mention being constantly hit by waves. The frightened child kept struggling as well. "Don't be afraid. I'll definitely get you back safely." I comforted her while pushing myself to swim harder. But just as I was about to reach the shore, my vision began to darken. My body hadn't fully recovered from injuries earlier, and my stamina was failing fast. I clenched my teeth, but I couldn't fight the growing dizziness. Suddenly, a soft pair of arms wrapped tightly around my waist from behind, and a woman's gentle yet resolute voice rang in my ear. "Hold on. Keep holding the child." I jolted slightly and turned my head, meeting the bright eyes of a young woman. Gritting my teeth, I tightened my hold on the child. The woman held me from behind and dragged both the child and me back toward the beach. David had seen with his own eyes how I had almost been swallowed by the waves. Now, seeing my pale face, he trembled in fear and rushed toward me the moment we reached the shore. "George, are you okay?" I forced out a smile. "I'm fine." But the next moment, everything went black, and I collapsed completely. Chapter 12. I had a very long dream. In the dream, I kept rising and sinking in the sea. I struggled desperately, trying to swim upward, but no matter how hard I tried, I could never reach the surface. A wave of suffocating pressure washed over me. I felt unbearably uncomfortable until I suddenly jolted awake. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw a pair of bright, peach blossom eyes. We stared at each other. I blinked, sensing something was wrong. Too close. So close she was practically pressed against me. Warmth lingered on my lips. Realizing that this person's lips were touching mine, my eyes widened, and I immediately raised my hand and shoved the person away. The woman toppled over completely and fell to the ground. The scene went silent for a moment. The woman climbed up, staring at me in a daze, then suddenly showed a wild, mischievous smile. "Waking up just to kick away your rescuer. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you." Only then did I notice that several people were gathered around me. David had also been stunned for a second, but then rushed over and grabbed my arm, explaining anxiously, "George, you fainted. This lady was giving you CPR." I was speechless. Meeting the woman's teasing gaze, I finally felt the embarrassment catch up to me. Sorry. Now that I had calmed down a little, I recognized her. She was the one who had pulled both me and the child out of the ocean. The woman deliberately put on a serious expression. "I'm your lifesaver. You not only owe me your life, you also pushed me to the ground, and now a casual apology is supposed to settle it." Her words made me feel even more embarrassed. I grew increasingly awkward. "I'm really sorry. I didn't process what was happening just now." The woman thought of how fast I'd shoved her and smirked. "Your reflexes seemed perfectly fine to me," I said sincerely. "How about I go with you to the hospital to check if you're hurt? I'll cover the medical fees, and I can also give you a thank you payment. I really appreciate you saving me." She let out a snort. "Trying to send me away with money? That's not very sincere. If you really want to thank me, then." I waited patiently for her outrageous demand. David also stared at her like he was ready to fight, but instead, the woman blinked and said, "Buy me a nice dinner. After all that chaos, I'm starving." I froze, then laughed brightly. "No problem." The woman smiled and extended her hand. "Anna." I reached out and shook it. "George." David stared, shocked. "So you're that Anna?" Anna raised an eyebrow. "You know me?" David laughed loudly. "South City's #1 social butterfly. Who doesn't know you?" I tugged David's sleeve awkwardly and turned to Anna. "Sorry, my friend speaks very bluntly." Anna smiled. "It's fine. He's not wrong." As she spoke, she stood up and threw me a playful wink. "Let's go to our rooms and change, then meet later at the restaurant." I nodded and waved. "See you soon." When Anna walked away, David couldn't help turning to me. "Didn't expect Anna to look that good. No wonder they call her the 100 Heartbreaker. But personality-wise, she's actually pretty nice. If she hadn't jumped in to save you today, you'd be done for. If something had happened to you, your sister would have skinned me alive." I couldn't help smiling. "Relax, my sister wouldn't do that." David and Alicia had liked each other for years, and 2 years ago they had finally confessed their feelings. David wasn't just my best friend, he was my future brother-in-law. I remembered in my past life, when my family fell apart, David had already married my sister Alicia, and she had been pregnant. But when the Wong family was destroyed, David couldn't escape fate either. My parents committed suicide. My sister miscarried from overwhelming grief. David, distracted and devastated, was in a car accident. My eyes turned red. I patted David's shoulder. "David, this time, we're all going to be okay." David didn't catch the deeper meaning behind my words and grinned brightly. "Of course, after surviving disaster, good fortune follows. And look at you, your romantic luck is arriving already. I've been observing." "Okay, that Anna, she's gorgeous. Tiny waist, long legs, practically a goddess. Let me tell you, the best way to get over an old relationship is to start a new one. Since you dumped the Ice Queen Willow anyway, why not try a hot, sweet girl like her? No wonder so many guys chase after her. With looks like that, investing early will never lose." Let me tell you something. A buddy told me Anna's nickname is 100 Heartbreaker, but truth is she's never actually dated anyone seriously. Total sweetheart. You. Seeing David was about to start running his mouth again, I covered my face and walked away quickly, pretending I didn't know him. But David kept chasing me, refusing to shut up. I finally resorted to a half-threat, half-surrender. "Bro, if you keep going, I'm telling my sister." David rolled his eyes so hard they almost flipped. "I'm worrying about your lifelong happiness here. Do you know how exhausting that is?" His voice wasn't quiet, and Anna hadn't gone far. She caught most of his rambling. She turned back, saw my face red all the way to the tips of my ears. Her lips curved slightly, amusement flashing in her eyes. Kind of cute. Chapter 13. A city. Willow was busy working in her office. These days, she numbed herself with work during the day, and at night, she could only fall asleep by holding the old items George had left behind and looking at his photos. She understood very well why Mrs. Liu had her younger brother brought back from abroad to join the company. Mrs. Liu was warning her and grooming her son. In the past, Willow might have fought for her position, but lately, her mind had been filled with only one thing: finding George. She had no energy or interest to care about the company. In fact, as more responsibilities were handed over to her brother, she felt an unexpected sense of relief. While she was feeling frustrated, her assistant burst into the office, excitement written all over her face, holding up a trending search. "President Liu, we found him, we found sir." Willow shot to her feet instantly, eyes full of urgency. "Where is he?" "South City," she murmured. "He really went back to South City." The assistant pointed at the trending topic for her to read. "President Liu, look, this news says that a mother and child encountered danger while swimming at the beach. The child was pulled away by the waves. At the critical moment, a young man noticed and rushed in to save her. While rescuing the child, he exhausted himself and suffered several accidents. In the end, a woman helped him halfway back, and that's how he made it to shore. It was really dangerous." Willow's heart clenched tightly. She quickly grabbed the assistant's phone and watched the posted video. The faces were blurred, but after so many years with George, she recognized him instantly. Watching him float up and down in the waves again and again made her own heart rise and fall with the sea, tightening painfully. Only when she saw him finally get pulled ashore did she breathe again. But seeing him collapse unconscious the moment he reached land made her panic all over again. She immediately checked the details of the trending news and discovered he wasn't in mortal danger. Only then did she relax. A smile finally appeared on her face. She instructed her assistant, "Buy a ticket. I'm going to find him." Seeing Willow finally smile, the assistant couldn't help feeling excited too. "Yes, I'll buy it right away." Feeling lighter, Willow hurried out of the office. But the moment she stepped out, her eyes met Makoto's. Makoto was at his workstation, on the phone with a friend. He didn't notice Willow's presence and was complaining. "What's so great about George anyway? He's just a boring old guy wrapped in designer brands. I'm younger and more interesting." Sooner or later Willow will toss him aside. Willow's face instantly darkened to the extreme. He looked pure and kind on the surface, but behind her back he spoke about George like that. George was better than him in every conceivable way, 1,000 times over. For a moment, Willow even questioned her own judgment. How had she ever fallen for someone like Makoto? Makoto finally caught sight of her from the corner of his eye. He turned his head, and almost dropped his phone in fright. He rushed over ingratiatingly. "Willow. President Liu, are you heading out?" He looked at her carefully, trying to please her. Ever since Willow had woken up from the accident, she had been cold toward him. Makoto had tried everything, but Willow no longer treated him the way she used to. He kept comforting himself, since she had divorced George for him. Maybe she was just feeling unsettled. Given time, she would surely let go of George. He was full of hope for Willow to come back to him. But what Willow thought the moment she saw him was, "Why are you still here?" Makoto's face turned pale, and he looked at her with hurt innocence. "President Liu, what do you mean? If I'm not here, where else can I be?" Willow rubbed her temples, tired and annoyed. She had met Makoto in a club. He was young and was being bullied into drinking. She couldn't stand it and stepped in to help. Later, she asked more questions and learned he was only 18, a freshman in college. His family was poor, so he had to work in a place like that to pay for tuition and living expenses. She had initially hidden her identity, telling him she was just an ordinary employee at the Liu Corporation. Yet Makoto still admired her and treated her with sweetness and gratitude. His seemingly simple and kind personality had softened her, and she gradually came to care for him. That day when they ran into George at the cake shop, Makoto had asked who George was. She hesitated, but eventually told him the truth. Makoto had cried and said, "Willow, I trusted you so much. Why did you lie to me? Why did you make me into someone who ruins other people's relationships?" Willow's heart had softened immediately, and she had comforted him for a long time. After revealing her identity, she didn't want Makoto to keep suffering working at the club, but since he insisted on earning money on his own, she had arranged for him to join the company and kept him by her side. Willow knew very clearly, she had indeed been moved by Makoto, but the person she cared about more was George. She had never once thought about divorcing George. Looking at Makoto now, aside from his youth and liveliness, he had nothing that surpassed George. If she had to choose between the two, the choice was obvious. She would choose George, and Makoto was precisely the reason George had gotten upset and left. Thinking of this, her expression cooled. She turned to her assistant and said, Handle it. Chapter 14. She walked straight past Makoto and headed out with long strides. Makoto panicked and couldn't help shouting, "Willow, what do you mean? Where are you going?" "Lou." Before he could finish, the bodyguard stepped forward and covered his mouth. The assistant said patiently, "Mr. Ito, Madam has already said she doesn't want you in the company anymore. You should go back first. Don't make things difficult for President Lou." MMFF. Makoto Ito struggled, wanting to explain, but the bodyguards dragged him out the door. Makoto stomped his feet in anger. The assistant stood in front of him and handed him a check. "Mr. Ito, I'm sure you understand what President Lou means. This is her compensation for you, enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. As for anything else, you should stop dreaming about it." Makoto stared at the check. The long string of zeros was something he never would have dared fantasize about in his life. If it were before, he would have happily taken the money and walked away. But the position of Willow's husband was right in front of him. If he could marry into the Lou family, he would gain far more than this. He was just one step away. How could he give up? With tears in his eyes, Makoto begged, "Assistant Wong, I don't want money. I only want Willow. Please help me plead with her again. I don't know what I did wrong or how I upset her. I'll change everything." The assistant lost her patience and tossed the check at him with a cold laugh. "Mr. Ito, take the money while you still can. Don't be too greedy, or you'll end up with nothing." Willow hadn't met many men, but the assistant had handled countless men trying to get close to Willow by any means. Makoto was the type she could see through at a glance, a classic gold digger. Only their president had been willing to try something new. After speaking, she didn't look at him again and walked away. Watching her back, Makoto stomped angrily, his face twisting. "Look down on me, will you? Just wait, when I become Willow's husband, the first person I fire will be you. I won't give up." Willow found my address. After landing, she drove straight there. I was in a private lounge with Alicia, David, Anna, and a few other friends. Ever since meeting Anna at the beach, she had latched onto me. Whenever I tried to refuse her, she would remind me that she had saved my life, making it impossible for me to turn her away. Plus, Alicia and David, worried I wouldn't get over what happened with Willow, had been subtly pushing us together. I had practically acquired a human-shaped tail. The atmosphere in the lounge was lively as everyone played a game of truth or dare. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. I happened to be sitting closest, so I got up to open it, and immediately locked eyes with Willow. My expression changed, and my voice cooled. "What are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice, but the people inside turned toward the door, and the room fell silent. Willow's gaze stayed fixed on me, her tone a little strained. "I came to find you." She was wearing a trench coat, travel-worn, tiredness evident in her eyes. David, always hot-tempered, rushed over the moment he heard her, pulling me behind him. "Willow, you still have the nerve to come find George? Get lost. Our George doesn't want to see you." Willow didn't react to his anger, only looked at me. "Can you give me a few minutes? We need to talk." Before I could speak, David cut in. "George is busy. No time." Just as he finished, Alicia walked over and gently patted his shoulder. "Is that how you talk to President Lou? She came all this way. Since she's here, why not come in and join us for a bit?" "Alicia, George is your brother. You." Before he could finish, Alicia sent him a pointed look. David's expression shifted instantly. With an exaggerated sigh, he said, Fine. Invite whoever you want." He then pulled me back to my seat with a disgruntled huff. He sat on my left, Anna sat on my right. That left Willow to sit beside Alicia. Anna leaned back lazily, moving closer to me to speak, her posture full of casual intimacy. Willow frowned slightly, suppressed her irritation, and said politely, "Hello, would you mind switching seats with me?" Chapter 15. Even though her tone was polite, the imposing aura of someone in power still radiated off her. Anyone else, sensing the tension in the air, would have immediately moved aside, but Anna only glanced lazily at me and asked, "And she is?" Willow introduced herself. "I'm his wife, Willow." Anna raised a brow and stared at me. I corrected calmly, "Ex-wife." Anna looked at Willow and let out a soft, mocking laugh. "That makes it inconvenient, doesn't it, Miss Ex-wife?" Her tone was full of challenge. The two women stared at each other, their auras equally strong. Seeing the coldness in my expression, Willow swallowed down her rising hostility and sat beside Alicia. We all sat around the table. A beer bottle was placed in the center. Spin the bottle, whoever it pointed to had to choose truth or dare. Originally, the dares were just small playful tasks, but when Alicia explained the rules for Willow, she changed them to, whoever the bottle points to must either tell a truth or drink 3 glasses of alcohol. The bottle spun quickly, and on the very first round, it pointed at Willow. She must have been prepared for this. She glanced at Anna, who had spun the bottle, then looked at me, and without hesitation, picked up her glass and drank 3 in a row. The burning alcohol slid down her throat as she looked at me. remembering the past. Her stomach had always been weak. I had always been the one who hated seeing her drink the most. Whenever she couldn't avoid alcohol at social dinners, I would send her sobering soup immediately afterward. Before drinking, I would prepare snacks for her so her stomach wouldn't hurt so much. She used to find my fussing annoying, but now seeing my cold indifference, she finally understood. It had been care. The bottle spun again. This time, it pointed at me. I smiled. "I'll drink." I picked up the glass, but before I could take a sip, Willow grabbed it. "I'll drink for him." Before I could speak, she downed the first glass. David, always eager for drama, shouted, "Keep going. There's a second and a third." Willow silently finished them. As the rounds continued, Willow kept getting chosen. She had barely eaten after rushing all the way here, and now she was drinking on an empty stomach. Her stomach ached faintly. Cold sweat gathered on her forehead. When the bottle pointed at her again, she finally chose truth. This time, I was the one spinning the bottle. Hearing her choose truth, I curled my lips slightly, looked straight into her eyes, and asked evenly, "Was cheating fun?" The moment I spoke, everyone turned to look at Willow. Some eyes held curiosity, some disdain and ridicule, others shock. I thought she would get angry and leave, but she held it in. Her face, already pale from drinking on an empty stomach, turned ghostly white after hearing my blunt question. Her lips parted, and finally she whispered one word, "Sorry." I let out a soft, cold laugh. Willow picked up the glass and quietly drank another 3. The alcohol burned like fire, scorching its way down to her stomach. What she swallowed wasn't just alcohol, it was the bitterness of my indifference. I had always been the one to be proactive and gentle, but this was the very first time I had treated her with such coldness. Only now did Willow finally understand what it felt like to be ignored by the person you liked, how painfully bitter and suffocating it was. Like some form of self-punishment, she kept drinking glass after glass. I didn't tell her to stop, so she didn't, and no one else dared intervene. Her head felt dizzy and heavy. She stood up and took a step toward me. "George, don't go." But before she could finish, sudden pain twisted her expression, and she turned her head sharply, and vomited a mouthful of blood. Everyone in the room jumped in shock. The next second, she lifted her head with difficulty, looked at me, and reached out, trying to grab my wrist, but the moment her fingers touched my skin, she completely lost consciousness, and collapsed to the floor. Chapter 16. Willow woke up in the hospital, and 4 needle inserted into her wrist. A nurse was checking her condition. Seeing her awake, she adjusted the drip speed while advising her, "You drank alcohol on an empty stomach and caused gastric bleeding. Don't drink like that again. It's too dangerous. If you hadn't been brought in time, you might not have made it. After you're fully awake, remember to go pay the rest of your medical fees." Willow's body had not fully recovered from the car accident she suffered while saving Makoto. Now, after drinking enough to cause stomach bleeding, she was even weaker. She looked around the ward, but didn't see George anywhere. With a hint of hope in her eyes, she asked, "Who brought me here?" The nurse replied, "The staff from the club." The light in Willow's eyes dimmed inch by inch, and her smile turned bitter. After finishing the 4, she went to pay the bill and then headed directly to the Wong residence. A servant heard the doorbell, opened the door, and after seeing Willow, froze before turning back nervously to call Alicia. "Miss, the former young lady is here." The word former made Willow sway slightly. In the past, because George had adored her, every time she came to the Wong residence, even the servants treated her warmly with utmost respect. And now, she couldn't even step through the door. Alicia came slowly after hearing she had arrived, her expression cold as she spoke. "President Liu, such an honor. To what do we owe the visit?" Her tone dripped with sarcasm. Willow could easily tell the reason Alicia let her into the private room earlier was clearly to force alcohol on her as revenge. Even now, Willow's lips were pale. One hand pressed against her still aching stomach as she said, "There are misunderstandings between me and George. I want to talk to him." Alicia let out a mocking laugh, standing on the steps and looking down at her. Willow, always the lofty one, now appeared rare and pitifully disheveled. But all Alicia could think of was the pale face and dim eyes George had the night he returned home. She had people investigate what had happened in a city and learned exactly what Willow had done to George. She wished she could kill Willow. It still felt insufficient. She wished Willow could suffer 10 or 100 times worse than her brother had. Seeing how Willow now cared about George, Alicia smiled. "Former sister-in-law, it's not that I won't call George for you. It's just that he's out on a date. He hasn't come back yet." Willow's expression froze, her voice trembling. "A date?" But she quickly shook her head in denial, face turning pale. "Impossible. We only just divorced. How could George possibly?" Alicia smiled, eyes narrowing. "Why not? He used to chase after you so desperately, and you treated him so coldly, without the slightest care. Now that Anna is beautiful and proactive, well, when a woman pursues a man, it's as thin as a sheet of paper. Who could resist?" Just as she finished speaking, the roar of a motorcycle engine grew louder. Willow turned toward the sound. I rode up on a motorcycle, with Anna sitting behind me, arms wrapped around my waist. A bright, bold smile lit my face, a smile Willow had never seen in all the years of our marriage. In her memory, I had always been a dull, overly cautious young master from a wealthy family. It was unimaginable for her to see me racing on a motorcycle like this, but the moment I saw her, my smile vanished. The motorcycle screeched to a stop right at Willow's feet. She didn't step back, only watched me. Anna, with blatant provocation, deliberately pressed herself closer against my back. I tapped her helmet. Childish. Anna huffed a laugh, removed her helmet, and leaned toward me so I could help her fix her hair. The subtle intimacy between us made Willow's chest burn with anger. I got off the motorcycle and finally looked at Willow. President Liu, what do you need? Willow pressed her lips together. I want to talk. I turned to Anna and Alicia. You two go inside first. Alicia frowned. I smiled lightly. I'm fine. When I saw Willow suddenly show up at the club earlier, and then watched her vomit blood from being made to drink, I had, pathetically, felt my mood shift for a moment. I could guess Willow had come to win me back, but after riding around a bit earlier, my mind had already sobered completely. Whatever feelings I once had for her had long been drained away by endless disappointment and hurt. It's Makoto now. Who will it be next time? I don't dare imagine. I can't love her anymore, and I don't love her anymore. Only when we were finally alone did Willow lose control and ask, "You and that woman earlier, what is your relationship?" Chapter 17. I glanced in the direction Anna had gone, then looked at Willow with clear impatience. What does it have to do with you? During the marriage, I had never asked her what her relationship with Makoto was. Now that we were already divorced, what right did she have to question me? Willow, what did you come here for? We're divorced. Makoto must have already handed you the divorce certificate. George, will never accept a wife who keeps a lover outside the marriage. Willow looked at me deeply before speaking with difficulty. George, I never wanted to divorce you. This time it was my fault. I was the one who drifted away in the marriage. Now that Makoto and I have separated, can you give me another chance? I snapped my head up, unable to hide my shock. She and Makoto, separated. Everything was different from my previous life. My tone became urgent. You never wanted to divorce, and you separated from Makoto. Willow didn't understand why I was so agitated, but she nodded immediately. I couldn't help asking, why? Why didn't you want to divorce me? Willow answered honestly. The Wang family and the Liu family are well matched. Our union benefited both sides. Although our marriage was a business arrangement, our married life was harmonious and happy. George, all the good things you did for me before, I never treasured them. Only after you left did I realize that I had long grown dependent on you, that I had long gotten used to having you by my side. My feelings for Makoto were just a momentary novelty. I already know I was wrong. Divorce benefits neither our families nor us. Come back with me. Can we remarry? The sight of the woman before me lowering her pride and humbly seeking reconciliation overlapped in my mind with the cold, aloof Willow from my past life. Images flickering back and forth. In my previous life, when I discovered she was cheating with Makoto, I lost control, argued with her hysterically, and even used the Liu family's power to pressure her. Not only did she not restrain herself, she instead treated me with cold violence, completely ignoring my existence. And when I later had someone send Makoto abroad, she personally brought him back, and then asked me for a divorce. Her request for a divorce pushed me into an even worse emotional spiral. My behavior became increasingly extreme. Our relationship slid into a place beyond repair, until finally, my family was ruined. My parents died, and I killed myself in front of her. But in this life, because I chose divorce, everything became different. She came looking for me to reconcile. She even separated from Makoto so easily. In my previous life, I thought I had lost to Makoto. I thought their so-called true love had defeated me. But the truth is, I lost to my own obsession. Because of my obsession, I destroyed my family. I couldn't help it. I laughed and cried at the same time. My eyes reddened as I murmured, so that steadfast, unbreakable love between you two wasn't all that unbreakable after all. Willow saw my wildly fluctuating emotions, even my slight trembling, and her expression grew concerned. She stepped forward, trying to reach for me. George, what's wrong? I lifted my gaze toward her. Willow, did you know? We were married for 5 years, but I had already loved you for 10. Before Willow could speak, I continued on my own. We attended the same university. The first name I heard after enrolling was yours. You kept a low profile and were mysterious, but every guy on campus talked about you. They said falling in love with you was as easy as eating and drinking. They said you were beautiful, capable, and far ahead of your peers, already involved in the company, taking on responsibilities in the family business even before university. In our dorm room of 4 boys, 3 had a crush on you, including me. I secretly followed all your news, attended events you might appear at, hoping to run into you. When I learned I could marry you, you don't know how happy I was. I was so excited I couldn't sleep the entire night. I thought, it didn't matter if you didn't love me. After all, you didn't love anyone else either. As long as I could stay by your side, that was enough. That was why, in my previous life, discovering she loved Makoto hurt me so deeply. It made my 10 years feel like a joke. I was unwilling that 10 years of love couldn't earn even a grain of sincerity. Unwilling that a woman I had loved for 10 years could be swayed by a manipulative guy like Makoto. But now, I was finally letting go. Chapter 18. My previous life had been nothing more than a prison built for my own obsession. The Willow of this life was not as decisive and ruthless as she had been back then. I no longer hated her the way I once had, but I also could no longer love her the way I used to. I looked at Willow, my gaze calm yet serious. Willow, maybe you've finally seen the good in me. Maybe in these 10 years, I've managed to move you a little. But loving someone for 10 years, it's exhausting. You should go. I don't love you anymore. I've already moved forward, and I won't look back. My expression was so serious and steady that for a moment, Willow felt as though something vital, something that supported her very life, was being carved out of her chest. Her vision blurred with sudden mist. Only when she raised a hand and touched her cheek did she realize that she was crying. Willow had always been less emotional than most people. Even since childhood, she never expected she would cry because of me. She stared at the glimmering droplets on her fingertips, slightly dazed. I was stunned as well when I saw her tears, but all I did was give a relieved smile. I turned, about to leave, when suddenly a figure rushed forward and dropped to his knees beside my legs with a loud thud. Startled by the sudden movement, Willow instinctively grabbed me and pulled me behind her, kicking the man away in one swift motion. He cried out in pain, fell to the ground, and immediately burst into tears. Willow, how could you kick me? Only then did Willow and I clearly see that the person who had suddenly appeared was Makoto. Willow stared at him in shock, her expression darkening. What are you doing here? And suddenly kneeling, what are you trying to pull? Makoto had secretly followed Willow's car all the way here. He had been spying from afar, and when he saw Willow lowering herself so humbly to win me back, he had already been seething with rage. He wouldn't have rushed out if he hadn't suddenly received a call from home telling him that his uncle had been arrested. Panicked, he had bolted out. Of course, he didn't dare tell the truth. Now, facing Willow and me, he could only cry as he kowtowed repeatedly toward me. Mr. Wong, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Liu President and I have already separated. I won't dare to provoke you ever again. Please let them spare my uncle. I had received the news long ago. The fact that Willow stopped me from calling the police back then didn't mean I had given up. After being discharged from the hospital, I called the police again. Over the past days, the officers had completed their investigation. They discovered that Makoto's uncle raised snakes for a living. The snakes thrown into the confinement room that night had been placed there by him. That night, Makoto secretly opened the door to let his uncle into the villa. The two worked together, which led to my being bitten and sent to the hospital in critical condition. And now, Makoto's uncle had likely been arrested, and Makoto had received the news. So he came running to plead pitifully. Makoto cried messily and turned to Willow. President Liu, please help me. If something happens to my uncle, my mother won't let me off. She'll beat me to death. I had already investigated all of this in my previous life. Makoto's maternal family had a long tradition of favoring boys over girls. His mother was a hardcore family pleaser, pouring all her resources into her younger brother, Makoto's uncle. Despite Makoto being male, his mother still prioritized her brother above all else, even treating her nephew better than her own son. Makoto had a cousin who freeloaded at home and did nothing. Because Makoto was good-looking, the whole family counted on him to marry a rich woman, draining him to support them. If he had not knowingly pursued a married woman and jeopardized my marriage, I would have pitied him. Had fate been kinder, I might even have helped him once. Willow surely knew his background as well. I crossed my arms, watching Makoto kneel and kowtow, waiting for Willow to feel sorry for him and step in to defend him. But this time, Willow only glanced at me, then frowned at Makoto, her tone icy. Stand up and talk. Why are you kneeling like that? People who don't know better might think George bullied you. Makoto froze, and even I looked at her in surprise. Seeing that Makoto remained motionless, Willow's voice grew even colder. Stand up. Makoto flinched and scrambled to his feet. Only then did Willow speak again. What does your uncle's situation have to do with George? Chapter 19. Makoto shrank his neck, glanced guiltily at Willow, and tears began to fall again as easily as breathing. I'm sorry. I also just received a call from home and only learned about everything that night. After Mr. Wong hit me, I had hearing damage in my left ear. My uncle and the others were furious when they heard. So after Mr. Wong was locked in the confinement room, they secretly released snakes inside, which caused him to get bitten and hospitalized. After Mr. Wang reported it, my uncle was found out and has now been arrested. He truly knows he was wrong. Please, for the sake that he only acted rashly because he was trying to protect me, his nephew, let him go this once. I apologize on his behalf. I'm begging you, please." With just a few sentences, he twisted the whole story, turning his relative's deliberate crime into an impulsive act done out of love for him, and he himself was framed as if he had nothing to do with it. Willow's face instantly darkened. "You're saying the snakes in the confinement room were released by your uncle?" Willow once thought he was merely naive and innocent because he was young, but a woman as sharp as Willow, who excelled in the business world, was not stupid. She quickly pieced everything together, her voice turning icy. "Makoto, your uncle doesn't even know where our family lives. How could he know George was locked in the confinement room, let alone release snakes at the perfect moment? Did you tell him to do it?" Makoto's face went pale. No, it wasn't me. I didn't know anything. I just didn't go back to the dorm that night. They asked where I was staying, and I told them the address. I really didn't think anything like this would happen." Willow's chest surged with anger. She turned toward me, perhaps recalling how I had begged for help that night, or the sight of my wounded, dying body after the snake bite. If she hadn't brought Makoto into the house, none of this would have happened to me. Even after I was hospitalized, she had still sided with Makoto, protecting him and refusing to let me call the police for his sake. Guilt and regret surged in her eyes. "George, I'm sorry. I answered calmly. Don't you think apologizing now is too late?" Willow fell silent. After a moment, she said, "I'll investigate everything and give you an explanation. I won't disturb you anymore." With that, she grabbed Makoto by the wrist and dragged him away. "Makoto, stop bothering him. If I ever find out you dare harass him again, I won't let you go." I glanced at her once, said nothing, and turned into the villa. Makoto watched my back, jealousy flashing through his eyes. This villa community, he had struggled and schemed just to sneak inside, and after asking around, he learned that each villa here cost several $100 million. He had thought he'd won, that he had chased George out and left him miserable, but instead, George's life after the divorce was not difficult at all. He had a loving family, lived in a luxurious villa, and a beautiful young woman was openly pursuing him. Meanwhile, Makoto himself was unloved by his family. The wealthy woman he finally managed to lure, Willow, was now ready to throw him away. Seeing the jealousy in his eyes, Willow narrowed hers and flung his arm aside. As if seeing straight through him, she said coldly, "Makoto, recognize your position. Some things, you're not even qualified to envy." Makoto fell to the ground, utterly humiliated, looking up at Willow. "President Liu, I just envy how lucky Mr. Wang is. Unlike me, born into a family like mine, never able to choose, doomed to be dragged down." Willow looked down at him from above as she straightened her sleeves. "Your misfortune has nothing to do with George. Now speak, what else have you been doing behind my back lately?" Makoto stiffened, panic flashing across his face. "President Liu, you know me. What could I do? What would I dare to do?" Willow leaned forward slightly, her gaze as cold as ice. "You'd better hope so. Otherwise, the price would be more than he could ever afford." Chapter 20. Makoto looked at her cold and merciless expression, terrified to the extreme. He desperately tried to explain and act pitiful, but the woman only threw out one impatient word, "Noisy." He immediately shut his mouth, not daring to irritate her further. Willow had spent years in a position of power. Her presence alone was something he could never withstand. She made a call and ordered her assistant to investigate. By the time the two of them returned to City A, the assistant had already delivered the investigation files. Willow took the documents, sat down on the sofa, while Makoto stood trembling beside her. As she flipped through the information the assistant gathered, the more she read, the uglier her expression became. The documents even included the surveillance footage from the mall that day. Makoto suddenly rushing over to kneel in front of George, saying those deliberately misleading words. Everything had been recorded clearly. The reason he was ostracized by his roommates wasn't because they were the problem. It was because he repeatedly seduced other people's girlfriends, and even slept with a roommate's girlfriend in their dorm room, which caused outrage. They also discovered that Makoto worked part-time at the club not for financial hardship. He had known from the beginning that the customers there were all wealthy and influential. He deliberately went there to find a sponsor. He even knew Willow's identity the very first time he met her. From the start, his approach had been intentional, deliberate seduction, knowingly inserting himself into someone else's relationship. When she reached the last page, Willow finally lost her patience and slapped the entire stack of documents hard against Makoto's face. "This is your so-called, I didn't dare. I didn't do anything. Then why don't you explain all of this to me?" Makoto's face was scraped by the edges of the papers, but he didn't dare care. He hurried to kneel and examine the documents. When he saw clearly what they contained, his face turned completely pale. "These are fake. Someone must have framed me on purpose. I didn't do any of this, I really didn't. Willow's expression was frightening, like she could devour him whole. He trembled violently as he tried to explain, but no one believed him. Willow instructed the assistant coldly, "Since he likes kneeling so much, take him to the busiest mall under our company and let him kneel for 3 days and 3 nights. Makoto was stunned with terror. "No, don't. I'll never be able to show my face again. I'll die." Faced with solid evidence, Makoto knew he had no way to deny it. He could only crawl to Willow's feet, crying as he clung to her leg and slapped himself. "President Liu, I know I was wrong, I really do, but I truly love you. From the moment I first saw you, I fell in love with you. I only wanted to marry you. I don't have a family background like George's. I'm inferior to him in every way. I had no choice, so I used some tricks. I did everything only because I love you. Please forgive me just this once. I'll never dare again. My family forces me. I can't help it." Tears that once might have looked pitiful, now only made her feel disgusted. He was like a beautiful viper, accustomed to using tears to disguise himself as helpless and pitiful, while you never knew when he would strike and sink his fangs into you. Thinking about how she had lost George because of a man like this, Willow could no longer restrain herself. She kicked Makoto hard in the shoulder. Makoto tumbled over, collapsing onto the ground, screaming in pain. "Willow, you promised you would protect me. How can you treat me like this?" Willow raised her hand and pointed at him. "He slapped George once, give him back 100. Make sure he remembers this lesson and never dares to do something so shameless again." Makoto was terrified. He didn't even have time to scream from the pain. He struggled to flee. But as soon as he moved, Willow's bodyguards seized him. Only now did he finally understand fear. A woman like Willow could lift him to the sky when she favored him, and with one moment of clarity, she could also kick him straight into hell. Unfortunately, he realized this far too late. Makoto was dragged out, and the room returned to silence. The assistant then handed Willow another folder. "President Liu, this is the information you requested, Mr. Wang's records from the past years." Chapter 21. After hearing George say he had loved her for 10 years, she couldn't help but send her assistant to secretly investigate George's past years. As she turned page after page, George's past was gradually revealed before her eyes. Only when she finished all of the documents did she realize how much he had done for her, all in places she had never even noticed. In the 5 years of their marriage, all his hobbies revolved around the things she liked. She preferred minimalist styles, so everything he bought gradually shifted to black, white, and gray. She hated when people were late, so he never once kept her waiting. In fact, just to be fully prepared, he would get up 1 or 2 hours earlier. Her stomach wasn't good, so for 5 years after their marriage, he would get up at 5 every morning to make her breakfast by hand. And yet before their marriage, he had been a young master who never cooked a meal in his life. After reading all the documents, that night, Willow had a strange dream. The scenes in the dream were vivid, so real it felt like she had truly lived through them. In the 5th year of her marriage to George, she cheated. She fell for an 18-year-old college student named Makoto. Since birth, she had been raised under elite education. At every age, she was expected to do exactly what people her age were supposed to do. Every step of her life had followed preset plans, such as inheriting the Liu Corporation, such as marriage. She never understood emotions. Makoto's sense of novelty captivated her almost instantly. In her social circle, keeping a lover outside of marriage was nothing unusual. Makoto, with his ordinary background, did seem pure and obedient, but he was of no actual benefit to her. She never once thought about divorcing George for Makoto, but she never expected that the always elegant, always composed George would turn into a completely different person the moment he learned of Makoto's existence. Every time she returned home, the atmosphere was suffocating, and George's eyes were always red and swollen. He forced her again and again to break things off with Makoto. He argued hysterically with her again and again. He even grew extreme enough to try to send Makoto abroad, forbidding him from ever returning to the country. She wanted an understanding, reasonable husband, so she grew irritated and proposed a divorce. In the dream, Willow saw with her own eyes. The moment she said the words, "Let's divorce," George shattered before her. The light in his eyes broke completely. He was hurt so badly he couldn't even stand straight. He screamed hoarsely, "Willow, if you want a divorce, then do it over my dead body." Willow panicked, explaining desperately, "George, no, it's not like that. I didn't want a divorce." But in the dream, everything spiraled out of her control. She trusted Makoto again and again, misunderstood George again and again, and hurt him again and again. She even pressured the Wang family, trying to force George to agree to the divorce. It became a power struggle between them. She waited for him to give up and bow his head, but she never expected that Makoto would secretly steal the Wang family's confidential information through her people, sell it to their competitors, and drag the Wang family into a crisis of bankruptcy. When she finally woke up and realized something was wrong, she learned that George's parents had committed suicide. Only then did she understand the severity of the situation. But when she tried to find George to explain, she saw him jump. He leaped off the top floor and died right in front of her. Willow's world froze in that instant. Later, she uncovered everything Makoto had done and punished the Ito family. Later, she saved the Wong family. But Alicia, upon learning that her parents and George died one after another, and that her husband David was left paralyzed from a car accident, turned white-haired overnight, her mind broke, and she could no longer run the company. Only then did Willow finally realize. She had long fallen in love with George. He had been a gentle rain, a quiet drizzle, slipping into her life, at first just a faint dampness. By the time she noticed, it had already seeped into her bones, but he had already left her in the most resolute, irreversible way. Willow woke up from the dream crying, her mouth still calling George. The familiar decorations of her home overlapped with the scenes in her dream. It took her a long time to regain her senses. Then she couldn't stay still even for a second. Like a madwoman, she rushed out, drove as fast as she could, and headed straight toward George's house. Chapter 22. I was eating hot pot with my family. I had sent David a message, inviting him to join us, and after David messaged Anna, she shamelessly showed up as well. A group of us ate and drank together, laughing and chatting non-stop. As soon as David walked in, he shoved his phone right into my face, loudly and excitedly. "George, hurry and look at this live stream. Evil has its punishment. Didn't Makoto plot and force you to kneel back then? Well, now the tables have turned." Willow arranged for him to kneel at the entrance of Times Square. "This time he's really embarrassed himself to the extreme. I heard he has to kneel for 3 whole days and nights. And not only is he socially dead in real life, he's socially dead online too. I don't know which kind soul did it, but someone even arranged for several top streamers to go film him live. Those streamers usually never care about this sort of thing, so who knows why they suddenly went to record Makoto." I glanced at the screen, saw the ID of one of the top streamers, then looked at Anna, who was calmly enjoying her food like nothing happened. Instantly, I knew. Those streamers were definitely arranged by her. All of them belonged to her company's network of accounts. Anna's lips curved slightly upward, and she quietly placed more meat into my bowl. David was still happily reporting gossip. Someone exposed that Makoto's a repeat offender. A guy from their school and his girlfriend were already about to get engaged, and Makoto cut in and caused their breakup. The guy ended up with depression. So pitiful. Karma really works. Heaven always settles the score. I even heard his family showed up, not to save him, but to beat him up. They said Makoto told his uncle that as long as they got rid of you, he'd successfully climb into a wealthy marriage. Once he became Willow's husband, their whole family would rise together. But now everything's gone down the drain, and his uncle even got arrested. Of course they'd hate him to death. On the live stream, Makoto was being slapped hundreds of times. His cheeks were swollen and red. He knelt curled up at the entrance of Times Square while crowds walked by, pointing and whispering about him. He tried desperately to cover his face, but it was useless. I swallowed the meat in my mouth and finally said, "The police station contacted me too." Makoto's uncle confessed and provided evidence that Makoto instructed him to release the snakes. They'll be arresting him soon. David clapped his hands in delight. Serves him right. That's what he gets for scheming and hurting people. Honestly, this is too light. I couldn't help but laugh. Willow had rushed all the way to the Wong family's door, but standing outside, hearing the laughter and cheerful voices from within, she couldn't bring herself to go in. In this life, she hadn't yet made unforgivable mistakes. George could still sit with his family, laughing, talking, eating joyfully. Such a rare and precious sight. She couldn't bear to ruin even a second of that happiness, until the few of us finished eating and stepped outside for a walk. When we spotted Willow at the door, I froze for a moment. "Why did you come again?" My tone held nothing but irritation at being disturbed, not a trace of anticipation. Willow stood there, staring fixedly at me, her mind replaying the scene of how I died right before her eyes in the previous life. She finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She rushed forward and threw herself into my arms. Anna, who stood beside me, immediately froze for a moment before her expression darkened. She rushed over trying to pull Willow off me. "Let go of him." Anna used a lot of strength, and her nail accidentally scratched Willow's arm. But even though Willow winced in pain, she still held me tightly, so tightly it felt like she wanted to carve me into her bones. Her voice trembled, choked with sobs. "I'm sorry. George, I'm sorry." I was startled at first, but I quickly realized something was wrong with her emotions. I frowned. "Willow, what happened? Let go of me first." Anna looked at her with dark, hostile eyes. If she weren't afraid of hurting me, she would have already done more than scratch Willow. The commotion drew the attention of my family. Everyone ran outside, all of them looking at Willow with wary eyes. Willow slowly released me. Seeing the guarded looks from my family members, she let out a bitter, desolate smile. Indeed, she had hurt me far too deeply. Her voice was strained as she stared at me and slowly began to speak. Last night, I had a dream. In the dream, you found out about Makoto, and we fought. I lost my mind because of Makoto and told you I wanted a divorce. And you, the moment Willow started speaking, I looked at her in shock, unable to hide it. Seeing my face suddenly turn pale, Willow's entire body began trembling. He knows exactly what she's talking about. No wonder he walked away so decisively this time. No wonder he said he had moved on and would never look back. Her eyes reddened as she stared at me. Her voice was so soft it was almost inaudible. That wasn't a dream, it actually happened, didn't it? I forced myself to suppress the surge of emotions in my chest. I tried to answer her calmly. Willow, I don't know what you're talking about. Whether what happened in your dream was real or not, it doesn't matter anymore. All the spirit drained from Willow's body in an instant. She looked like a person whose soul had been hollowed out. She murmured, "Yes, because you could never forgive me. If it were only about Makoto, she might still foolishly hope that George would turn back someday. But in the previous life, she had even driven George to die before her very eyes. The pain of losing him completely, just imagining it made her chest tighten until she could barely breathe. How could she even dare ask for forgiveness?" Willow couldn't bring herself to say any more. Her gaze swept across the Wong family members as she whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she looked at me again and repeated softly, "I'm sorry." My family looked confused, unsure why she apologized to them, but I understood. I didn't say, "I forgive you," because across 2 lifetimes, with several lost lives between us, there was no way to forgive. After speaking, Willow staggered a bit as she turned around and slowly walked away. Her figure seemed to shrink instantly, as if she had become hunched and aged within moments. David came over and asked, "What's wrong with her? What kind of fit was that? She looked like she just had some sort of mental breakdown." I chuckled. "Don't mind her. It has nothing to do with us. Come on, let's go for a walk. Let's go." I took one last glance at Willow's retreating figure, then withdrew my gaze and smiled as I continued forward. Everyone kept laughing and walking ahead, completely unaffected by Willow's sudden appearance. Willow returned to her car. Her gaze clung greedily to George. She saw Anna standing beside him, leaning toward his ear and whispering something. George burst into laughter. The two looked so close, so natural, so well matched, and she no longer had the right to stand beside him. 1 year later, Anna and I remarried, hosting a grand wedding banquet. Willow sent a congratulatory gift worth over 100 million, along with a handwritten letter. I returned the gift. As for the letter, I didn't even open it. I threw it straight into the trash. Anna, dressed in her wedding gown, walked toward me step by step under the blessings of friends and family, and I walked toward my happiness. How wonderful. In this life, I didn't take the wrong path. Everything was still in time. I still had my family, my beloved, and my future. How wonderful.